The winter had teeth. Captain Garrett Hayes pressed his back against frozen earth, breath crystallizing in the air like dying words. Around him, the defensive line crumbled. 3 kilometers of trenches, gone in 40 minutes. 23 soldiers at dawn. 19 bodies still moving at 0847 hours. The mathematics of survival grew simpler with each passing minute. Command, this is Bravo 6. Hayes kept his voice level, professional. The training never left, even when everything else did. We are taking heavy casualties, multiple KIA, requesting immediate extract. Static swallowed the transmission whole. His radio operator, Specialist Danny Foster, lay motionless 10 meters away. The snow around him had gone dark. Hayes didn't need to check vitals. He'd seen enough death to recognize its particular stillness, the way a body stopped being a person and became just another object in the landscape. Hayes reached for the backup channel. His hands shook. Not from fear, from cold. That's what he told himself. Any station, this is Bravo 6 actual. Multiple casualties, enemy forces advancing, requesting immediate support. A bullet struck the embankment above his head. Dirt and ice rained down. He dropped flat, rifle pressed against his chest. Through the scope, he watched them. Enemy forces moving through the storm like shadows with purpose. Disciplined, coordinated. They'd known exactly where to hit. Someone had given them the playbook. Behind him, Lieutenant Claire Ashford dragged a wounded sergeant toward what remained of the aid station. Her uniform was shredded at the shoulder, blood freezing against the fabric in dark crystalline patterns. Her face held that expression Hayes had seen too many times, the look of someone doing math they didn't want to finish. "Captain," she shouted over the wind, "Major Brennan is down, shrapnel to the chest. He's not—" "I know." Hayes crawled to her position. The wounded sergeant wasn't breathing anymore. Ashford's eyes were hollow, pupils dilated with shock and exhaustion. They'd been fighting for 6 hours. It felt like 6 years. "We can't hold this position," she said. "We don't have a choice. We don't have ammunition." Hayes checked his magazine. 11 rounds. He'd started the day with 200. The command bunker was silent now, either destroyed or abandoned. The only sounds were wind, distant gunfire, and the labored breathing of men who were learning what it meant to die slowly in the cold. Ashford pulled out a crumpled map with trembling hands. "There's an old observation post 7 clicks north. If we can reach it, we'll be cut down in the open. Better than waiting here to be overrun." Hayes stared at the map. The observation post had been decommissioned 3 years ago. No supplies, no support, just 4 walls and a roof. But it was higher ground. In a firefight, elevation was the difference between shooting and being shot. He was about to give the order when Corporal Tucker Webb stumbled into the trench. His uniform was smoking, face blackened by powder burns. The kid was 25 but looked 50 in that moment. War did that. Aged you in hours instead of years. "Sir," Webb gasped, collapsing against the frozen wall. "The east flank is gone. Everyone. They had positions we didn't even know about. Perfect ambush points." "How many?" "All of them, sir. 37 soldiers. They were dead before they could call for help." Ashford closed her eyes. Hayes felt something shift in his chest. Not panic, worse. The cold certainty that they'd been set up. That this wasn't combat, this was execution. His radio crackled with fragmented voices, ghost signals from dying men. "Under fire, need medic. God, they're everywhere." Then silence. Hayes switched frequencies, searching for any intact unit, any sign that command gave a damn about 19 soldiers bleeding out in Montana mountains. Nothing but static and the white noise of abandonment. That's when Webb said it. Quiet, like confessing a sin. "Sir, there's one more option." Hayes looked at him. Webb's eyes held something Hayes hadn't seen before. Not hope, something stranger. Belief. In the archives, there's a classified file. Codename Echo 7. Ashford frowned. That's a legend. A ghost story they tell recruits to make them feel better about impossible odds. Major Brennan mentioned it. Webb insisted. Before his voice caught. Before he said if we were ever this desperate, if communications failed completely, there was one frequency that might still work. What frequency? The old forward recon channel, the one they sealed after the Kalvik operation. Hayes had heard the stories. Every soldier had. Echo 7, the phantom sniper, the one who'd held an entire mountain pass alone for 3 days, who'd eliminated 47 targets without missing a single shot, who'd vanished after completing a mission that officially never happened. Some said she'd died. Others claimed she'd simply walked away, disgusted with command decisions that had killed her team. A few whispered she was still out there, watching, waiting. That was 6 years ago, Hayes said. If she even existed, she's long gone. Webb pulled a laminated card from his vest. The plastic was cracked, the numbers faded, but legible. Brennan kept the frequency card. He told me it was insurance, for when everything went wrong. Ashford grabbed the card. Her hands were steady now. Combat did that too. Made you calm when you should be terrified. This is insane. Do we have another option? Webb asked. The wind howled. Somewhere in the distance, artillery boomed. The sound rolled across the valley like thunder, but there was no lightning. Just fire and the promise of more death. Hayes took the frequency card. Get me a secure channel. If this is our last transmission, he thought, we might as well make it count. Private Danny Foster had been in country for 6 weeks when he first heard about Echo 7. It was during a supply run, in a half-collapsed bunker that smelled like diesel and old sweat. The veterans spoke in low voices, the way people do when discussing the dead or the sacred. She could shoot through walls, one said. I'm serious. She knew where they were before they moved. Like she could see through solid matter. That's impossible. Tell that to the 40 guys she dropped in Kalvik. Foster had listened, not quite believing, but not quite dismissing it either. The military was full of stories. Most were bullshit, some weren't. The trick was knowing which was which. Now, huddled in the frozen trench, he watched Captain Hayes adjust the old radio with shaking fingers. Lieutenant Ashford stood beside him, arms crossed against the cold. Her face was skeptical. Her posture said she expected nothing. This is a waste of time, she said. Then it won't matter. Webb handed Hayes a headset. Frequency's locked in, sir, but I'm not getting any carrier signal. That just means no one's transmitting, or the channel's dead. Hayes ignored him. Pressed the transmit button. His voice was steady, professional. The voice of a man who'd been taught to maintain composure even when the world was ending. Echo 7, this is Bravo 6 actual. If you're receiving, we need immediate fire support. Coordinates to follow. Static. Ashford shook her head. I told you. Echo 7, Hayes tried again, harder now. We have multiple casualties and are about to be overrun. Requesting any available support. Please respond. Nothing. Foster felt his stomach sink. They'd wasted precious minutes on a ghost. Minutes that could have been spent running. Dying with purpose instead of dying while hoping. Hayes keyed the mic again. Voice different now. Not the professional soldier. Something deeper. More human. Echo 7. This is an emergency transmission. If anyone is monitoring this channel... No one's there, sir, Webb said quietly. But Hayes didn't stop. Echo 7, if you can hear this, his voice cracked. Just slightly, just enough to reveal the man beneath the rank. We're dying out here. 19 soldiers. No ammunition. No extract. We need... He paused. Something shifted in his expression. The recognition that came when you finally admitted the truth. We need you. The silence that followed felt heavier than the snow, thicker than the blood freezing in the trenches. It was the silence of prayers unanswered, of hope dying in real time. Ashford put a hand on his shoulder. Come on, we need to move now while we still... The radio hissed. Everyone froze. Through the static came a voice. Female. Calm. Cold as the winter around them. Each word pronounced with the precision of someone who'd learned that wasted syllables meant wasted seconds, and wasted seconds meant death. Echo 7 listening. Who needs me? Foster's blood went ice, not from the cold, from something else. The sudden understanding that legends sometimes had frequencies, that ghosts could speak. Hayes stared at the radio like it had just performed a miracle. His hand hovered over the transmit button. Years of training fought against the shock of answered prayers. This is Captain Garrett Hayes, Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion. We're under heavy assault. Need immediate... I know where you are, the voice interrupted. Not rude, just efficient. The way you'd correct someone about to waste time on information you already possessed. I can see your position. Hayes exchanged glances with Ashford. Her skepticism was cracking. Webb's eyes were wide, reflecting the dim light of the radio display like a believer witnessing divinity. You can see us? Hayes asked. Thermal signature, 19 bodies still moving. You're grouped near the eastern trench line, approximately 40 meters from a destroyed command bunker. You have enemy forces in crescent formation, 38 hostiles visible, more in reserve. The precision was unnerving. It wasn't a guess. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the certainty of someone reading numbers off a screen. Who are you? Ashford demanded, grabbing the radio. Silence. Then, softer, almost amused, you called me. That means you're desperate enough not to ask questions. We need to know. You need fire support. I can provide it. But I have one condition. Name it. Don't ask where I am. Don't try to find me. Don't send anyone to my position. You get my help from a distance or you don't get it at all. Hayes took the radio back. His training reasserted itself. Sometimes you made deals with ghosts. Sometimes that was the only option left. Agreed. What do you need from us? Stay alive for 12 minutes. I'm repositioning. Wait, but... The channel went dead. Foster looked at Captain Hayes. The officer's face was pale. Paler than the snow. Paler than the corpses cooling in the trenches. Sir? Foster heard himself ask. What just happened? Hayes's voice was quiet, haunted. I think we just made a deal with a ghost. The old communication system hummed to life with reluctance, circuits warming after years of disuse. Lieutenant Ashford stared at the radio as if it might explode, as if the voice that had come through it was somehow more dangerous than the bullets. This doesn't make sense, she said. That channel was decommissioned, encrypted. There's no way, she answered. Hayes cut in. His voice had changed, steadier now, like a man who'd been drowning and suddenly found solid ground beneath his feet. Not salvation, just something to stand on while you figured out the next move. We don't even know if it's really her, Ashford pressed. Could be enemy intelligence, a trap. Then we're already dead. Webb's voice was flat. Might as well see what happens. Foster checked his rifle for the 3rd time in as many minutes. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The cold, the fear, both. Around them, the remaining soldiers of Bravo Company huddled in whatever cover they could find. Some bandaged wounds with strips torn from dead men's uniforms. Others simply stared at nothing. That 1,000-yard look Foster had seen in documentary footage, but never in person. Not until today. Private Rachel Kim crouched beside a dead sergeant, methodically removing ammunition from his vest. She didn't look at his face. Foster didn't blame her. The sergeant's eyes were still open, staring at the sky, seeing nothing, seeing everything. How much time? Hayes asked. Webb checked his watch. 9 minutes since she went off channel. Enemy movement still advancing. Slower now. They're being cautious. Why? Don't know, sir. It's like they're waiting for something. Ashford crawled to the trench edge, raising binoculars with frost-covered lenses. Through the swirling snow, she could make out shapes, moving methodically through the ruins of the forward positions. Not rushing, not celebrating, just searching. They're not waiting, she said. They're searching for something. For what? She lowered the binoculars. Her voice was quiet. For her, Echo 7. They know she's out there. The implications settled over them like another layer of snow. The weight of understanding that they weren't just caught in a firefight, they were caught in something older, a hunt that had been going on for 6 years. You're saying they're as afraid of her as... A single shot rang out. Not close, distant, maybe 800 meters north. Through the storm, they heard the sound of someone screaming, then silence, then nothing but wind. Hayes's radio crackled. Echo 7 to Bravo 6. The voice was calm, professional, like she was reporting weather conditions instead of death. Enemy sniper team eliminated. You have 17 hostiles advancing on your position from bearing 270. Prepare to move on my signal. Ashford grabbed the radio before Hayes could respond. How do you know their exact position? Because I'm watching them through a scope, and they're about to have a very bad day. The connection cut out again. Foster felt his pulse hammering. Whoever this Echo 7 was, she wasn't just talking. She was already in position, already working, already killing. Another shot, this one closer. Then 2 more in rapid succession. The enemy advance stuttered. Voices shouted in confusion through the storm. Orders given, orders ignored. The sound of discipline fracturing under the weight of an invisible threat. What's happening? Kim asked, magazine halfway loaded. Webb's eyes were wide. She's engaging. She's actually doing it. 4 more shots, measured, patient, each one followed by a different scream, a different voice calling for a medic that wouldn't come. The kind of screaming that reminded you bullets weren't just physics. They were agony made kinetic. The enemy fire grew erratic, undisciplined. They were shooting at shadows now, burning ammunition on ghosts, on the possibility of death hiding in every shadow. Hayes's radio crackled again. Bravo 6, enemy line is broken. You have a corridor 40 meters wide, bearing 035. Move now. You have 90 seconds before they regroup. Where do we go? Follow the tracers. I'll mark your path. Tracers? We don't have... A bright streak cut through the snow, struck a boulder 30 meters ahead. Then another, and another. A dotted line of burning phosphorus cutting through the darkness. Each round igniting on impact. Each one a breadcrumb leading away from death. She's using tracer rounds, Ashford breathed. Marking the safe route. Hayes didn't hesitate. Everyone up. We move now. The soldiers rose as one. Discipline overriding exhaustion. Training overriding terror. They'd been waiting for orders, for something to do besides die slowly in the cold. Now they had direction, purpose, the difference between victims and survivors. They ran. Foster sprinted through knee-deep snow, lungs burning, rifle clutched to his chest. Around him, others did the same. Some helped the wounded, others provided covering fire at targets they couldn't even see, just shooting into the storm, into the possibility of enemies, into the hope that noise alone might buy them seconds. More shots from Echo 7, each one impossibly precise, each one dropping an enemy soldier who'd gotten too close to their escape route. Foster didn't see the bodies, didn't need to. He could hear them, the wet thump of impact, the sudden absence of pursuing footsteps. 70 meters, 50. The ground exploded to their left. Mortar fire. The enemy had finally zeroed in. Snow and earth erupted in dark geysers. Shrapnel sang through the air like angry insects. Keep moving, Hayes roared. Another tracer round struck ahead, marking their next waypoint. A path through hell drawn in fire. 30 meters. 20. Webb stumbled, caught himself, kept running. His breath came in ragged gasps. His legs felt like rubber, like they'd stop being parts of his body and become abstract concepts of movement. They reached the tree line just as the mortars found their old position. The trench where they'd been pinned erupted in fire and shrapnel. The concussion wave hit them like a physical thing. Hot wind in freezing air. The smell of cordite in scorched earth. Foster collapsed behind a thick pine, gasping. His legs felt like they'd been replaced with something that only resembled legs. Something that hurt and trembled and barely functioned. Ashford did a head count, pointing at faces, marking survivors. 19. We're all here. Hayes raised the radio. His voice was hoarse. Echo 7. We're clear. Don't thank me yet. They're regrouping. You need to keep moving. There's a rocky outcrop 1 click east. Defensible position. Get there and wait for extraction. What about you? I'll keep them busy. Echo 7. But she was already gone. The frequency empty. Just static and the sound of their own breathing. The sound of 19 people who'd been given a few more minutes of life by someone they couldn't see, couldn't thank, couldn't even verify existed. Webb stared at the radio. His face held an expression Foster had never seen before. Not quite gratitude, not quite fear. Something between worship and terror. Who is she? Webb whispered. Hayes didn't answer, just stared at the tree line, at the snow falling, at the path marked in fire that had led them away from death. In the distance, more shots. Precise, methodical. The sound of someone who'd been doing this for 6 years. Who'd learned that survival wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about being patient, invisible, inevitable. Move, Hayes ordered, before she changes her mind. They moved. Behind them, the shooting continued. A ghost with a rifle, buying time measured in heartbeats, paying for their survival with ammunition that couldn't be replaced and a position that couldn't be held forever. Foster ran and wondered who saves the person who saves you, who watches over the guardian, who keeps the ghost alive when everyone else is already dead. The questions followed him through the snow, unanswered, perhaps unanswerable. Perhaps that was the point. The scope was an extension of her eye. Through 700 meters of hostile terrain, through falling snow and bitter wind, Raven Cross watched the enemy forces below with the patience of a predator that had learned hunting was 90% waiting and 10% mathematics. Echo 7, a name she hadn't used in 6 years, a name that still tasted like blood and betrayal. But the soldiers didn't need to know that. They'd called. She'd answered. That was enough. Her position was perfect. A collapsed radio tower on the ridge providing both elevation and concealment. The snow had done the rest, covering her tracks, turning her into another shadow in a landscape full of them. Just another piece of winter that happened to carry a rifle. She adjusted the weapon, custom built, parts scavenged and modified over years of isolation. The scope was military grade, liberated from a depot that officially never existed. The suppressor was homemade but effective. 14 rounds left. She'd have to make them count. Through the scope, she watched the enemy squad leaders arguing. Their body language told the story. Confusion, anger, fear. They'd lost 12 soldiers to an attacker they couldn't locate, couldn't see, couldn't fight. Their advance had stalled. They were thinking about retreat. She wouldn't let them, not yet. One squad leader raised a radio to his mouth. Raven read his lips, understood the words even without hearing them. He was calling for reinforcements, air support, heavy weapons. That couldn't happen. She centered the crosshairs on his chest, exhaled slowly, the way she'd been taught, the way she'd practiced 10,000 times. Squeezed. The rifle kicked gently against her shoulder. Through the scope, she watched the squad leader drop. Simple physics. Bullet meets flesh, flesh loses. Chaos erupted below. Soldiers scattered, diving for cover, firing blindly into the storm, wasting ammunition on ghosts, on the possibility of death hiding in every shadow. She could have picked off 3 more while they panicked. Easy shots. But that wasn't the objective. The objective was psychological warfare. Keep them scared. Keep them disorganized. Make them waste resources chasing phantoms. She shifted position, low-crawling 15 meters to a secondary vantage point. Never stay static. That's how you die. Movement was survival. Stillness was a gravestone waiting to be carved. Her radio crackled with encrypted chatter, military surplus, modified to access frequencies that were supposed to be locked. The enemy was adapting, trying to triangulate her position based on muzzle flash and sound. They'd get close eventually, but not close enough. She switched to the command channel she'd been monitoring, the Bravo Company frequency. They thought it was secure. They were wrong. Everything was accessible if you knew how to listen. If you had 6 years and nothing but time. Reaching the outcrop now, setting up defensive positions. No sign of pursuit. Captain Hayes's voice, steady, professional. The kind of voice that reminded her why she'd picked up the rifle in the first place. Before everything went wrong. Before she learned that the enemy wasn't always the one shooting at you. Good. They'd followed her directions. Now came the hard part. Keeping them alive long enough for extraction. Assuming extraction came. Assuming command gave a damn about 19 soldiers in Montana mountains. She'd learned not to make assumptions about command. Raven checked her watch. The nearest evac unit was 40 minutes out. If they even responded to the distress beacon. If they didn't decide 19 soldiers were acceptable losses. Command had a habit of making those calculations. Lives versus logistics. Bodies versus budget. She'd been on the wrong side of that equation before. Through the scope, she spotted movement. 3 enemy soldiers attempting to flank the outcrop where Bravo Company had taken shelter. Smart, disciplined, the kind of soldiers who'd been trained properly, who understood that frontal assault was suicide when your enemy held high ground. She adjusted for wind and distance, temperature drop, Coriolis effect at this range, all the variables that turn shooting from art into science. First shot, lead soldier, center mass, down. Second shot, trailing soldier reaching for radio, down. Third shot, middle soldier turning to run, down. The rest of the enemy force pulled back, unwilling to advance without knowing where death would come from next. Good. Let them be cautious. Caution bought time. Time bought survival. Her radio hissed. Echo 7, this is Bravo 6. Enemy forces have withdrawn. What's your status? Raven considered not answering, letting them think she was gone. It would be easier that way. Clean. But something in the captain's voice stopped her. Not fear, determination. The kind of voice that reminded her of Ward Brennan. Before the artillery, before everything. Still here, she replied. You have 35 minutes until extraction window. Stay put. Stay quiet. Understood. Echo 7. Pause. Who are you? The question hung in the frozen air. She almost laughed. Almost. The sound died in her throat, replaced by something colder, heavier. Someone who made a mistake 6 years ago, she said finally. I'm trying not to make it again. Before he could respond, she switched off the radio, returned to her scope. The enemy was regrouping, bringing up heavier weapons. They'd figured out that frontal assault wouldn't work, so they'd try to burn them out. Mortars, artillery, the tools of men who couldn't win with skill, so they won with volume. She counted 4 mortar teams setting up positions. Too many targets, too spread out. She couldn't stop them all, but she could make them pay for every round they fired. Raven settled into her position, breathing slowly, finger resting gently on the trigger. The wind shifted, snow fell harder, and Echo 7 went back to work. 6 years ago, the winter had been just as cold. Operation Kalvik. The name was burned into her memory like a brand, like something that hurt every time she thought about it, but couldn't stop thinking about anyway. They'd been a team, 4 soldiers, 1 mission, simple reconnaissance. Identify enemy supply depot. Mark coordinates. Extract. Standard procedure. The kind of operation they'd run a dozen times. Sergeant Raven Cross, 28 years old, lead sniper, best shot in the battalion. That's what they'd told her. That's what she'd believed. Major Ward Brennan, 54, team leader, veteran of 3 wars, the kind of soldier who'd seen everything and survived by being careful. Methodical, never took unnecessary risks. Specialist Grant Morrison, 32, communications expert, married, 2 kids. Always showed pictures, always talked about going home, getting out, living the quiet life. Corporal Kyle Hendricks, 26, heavy weapons specialist, joked too much, laughed too loud. The kind of person who made war almost bearable because he refused to let it be only suffering. 4 soldiers in Montana wilderness, winter deployment, domestic operation, low risk. That's what the briefing said, low risk. They'd reached the coordinates at 0600 hours. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that promised snow and delivered on its promises. The supply depot was supposed to be there, active, full of equipment and personnel. It was empty, not abandoned, not recently evacuated, just empty, like it had never been used, like the intelligence had been wrong, like someone had given them coordinates to nothing. Brennan had called it in immediately, radio transmission clear, professional. Command, this is Echo Team. Target location empty, no activity, no structures. Request clarification on coordinates. Static. Then a voice, calm, administrative. Echo Team, coordinates are correct. Hold position. Artillery strike inbound in 6 hours. Extract after confirmation. Raven remembered the look on Brennan's face, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes narrowed. He'd known something was wrong. Veterans developed instincts, intuition built from pattern recognition and survival. Command, this is Echo Actual. Negative on 6-hour hold. Position is compromised. We need immediate extract. Echo Team, hold position. Artillery strike is scheduled. Birds will extract after strike confirmation. 6 hours, sir. Morrison had spoken quietly. If we stay here 6 hours, someone's going to find us. This location is exposed. Brennan had nodded, keyed the radio again. Command, requesting immediate extract. Position is tactically unsound for extended hold. Echo Team, orders stand. Hold for 6 hours. Extract after strike. Command out. The radio had gone silent. Brennan had stared at it, then at his team. His face had been unreadable. The mask soldiers wore when they knew the orders were wrong, but had no choice except to follow them. We dig in, he'd said. Make ourselves invisible. 6 hours, then we're gone. They'd done what they could. Concealment, defensive positions, watch rotations, all the procedures, all the training, everything that was supposed to keep you alive when the world wanted you dead. 4 hours later, they'd heard it coming, the whistle, the sound artillery makes when it's falling from the sky, when physics and explosives are about to turn air into shrapnel. Morrison had looked up, face confused. That's not 6 hours, he'd said. That's... The first shell hit 200 meters away. The concussion threw them to the ground. The second hit closer. The third closer still. A pattern, walking toward them. Deliberate, precise. Not a strike on the depot, a strike on them. Run, Brennan had shouted. Scatter, move. They'd run. But artillery doesn't care about running. It cares about mathematics, about trajectory and blast radius and fragmentation patterns. Morrison died first, direct hit. One moment he was there, the next he was gone. Just gone, like he'd been erased. No body, no trace, just absence where a person used to be. Hendricks died covering Brennan, threw himself between the major and the explosion, took the shrapnel that should have killed the team leader. His last words were a joke. Something about buying everyone around in hell. Then he stopped talking, stopped breathing, stopped being Kyle, and became just another casualty. Brennan and Raven had made it to cover, a collapsed bunker, concrete walls thick enough to stop fragments. They'd huddled there, listening to the world explode around them, waiting for it to stop, for the killing to end. When silence finally came, Brennan was bleeding, shrapnel in his side, in his leg. Not immediately fatal, but bad. The kind of wounds that killed slowly if you didn't get treatment. Go, he'd said. Get out. I'll slow you down. We extract together. Raven, his voice had been firm, final. You can move fast. I can't. If you stay, we both die. If you go, one of us survives. She'd started to argue. He'd grabbed her arm, squeezed hard. Listen. His eyes were intense, focused. They knew. Command knew we'd see the empty depot, knew we'd call it in. The strike wasn't for a target, it was for us, to make sure we couldn't report what we didn't find. That's insane, is it? Think, wrong coordinates, extended hold time, early strike. He coughed, blood on his lips. They're cleaning up loose ends. We saw something we shouldn't have, or they think we did. What do? You survive. You get out. You tell someone. Anyone. Make sure Morrison and Hendricks didn't die for nothing. I can't just leave you. Brennan had pulled something from his vest. A laminated card. Frequency numbers faded but readable. Take this. Old forward recon channel. Not in the system anymore. If this happens again, if they try this on another team, you answer. You save them. Promise me. Ward. Promise me, Sergeant. His voice had cracked, not from pain, from something deeper. Make their deaths mean something. She'd taken the card, nodded, unable to speak. Brennan had smiled, sad, tired. Good, now go. I'll hold here, buy you time. When they come to confirm the strike, I'll make them think you're dead too. Scattered, no body to recover. What will you tell them? That you died a hero, that we all did. He'd pushed her toward the exit. Go, that's an order. She'd gone, left him there, bleeding, dying. She'd run through snow and fire, through the aftermath of artillery, through the graveyard they'd made of an empty field. Behind her, she'd heard gunfire. Brennan engaging scavengers. Enemy forces come to verify the kill. He'd fought, bought her minutes, bought her survival with bullets and blood. She'd made it to the tree line, kept running, didn't stop until her legs gave out, until she collapsed in snow and wept for men who died because someone decided their knowledge was more dangerous than their lives. 3 days later, she'd returned to base. Brennan was there, in medical, barely alive. They'd found him, evacuated him, saved him, but they hadn't saved the truth. The debrief had been short, brutal. A colonel she'd never met, questions that weren't really questions, statements disguised as inquiries. Your team failed to hold position, scattered under fire. 2 confirmed KIA. You abandoned your post. She tried to explain. The early strike, the wrong coordinates, Brennan's orders. None of it mattered. The report was already written. The narrative already decided. Records classified. Mission failure. Specialist Morrison and Corporal Hendricks killed in action. Sergeant Cross discharged for psychological trauma. Unsuitable for continued service. She'd found Brennan in the hospital. He'd been awake, eyes hollow. He'd known what happened, known they'd been erased. They won't let us talk, he'd whispered, but I kept the frequency. His hand had gripped hers, weak, shaking. When it happens again, and it will, you answer, save them, make it mean something. 2 weeks later, she disappeared, took her gear, her skills, her guilt, vanished into Montana wilderness, became a ghost, because ghosts couldn't testify, couldn't report, couldn't be silenced except by choice. For 6 years she'd lived there, Survived, watched, monitored frequencies, tracked patterns, learned that Kalvik wasn't unique, that Rally Point Zulu was a name used again and again, a code for elimination, for cleaning up inconvenient soldiers who'd seen too much. She'd waited for the next team, the next sacrifice, the next chance to do what Brennan had asked, make it mean something. The radio crackled. Present day, present danger, the past releasing her back into the now. Echo 7, this is Bravo 6. Multiple contacts, they're surrounding us. Raven shook off the memories, focused on the scope. The enemy was moving. 4 mortar teams, 12 soldiers providing security. They were going to saturate the outcrop, turn it into a killing field. She did the math. 4 tubes. Standard mortar team procedure. 3 rounds per minute sustained. 12 rounds before they'd need to reposition. The outcrop would be rubble in 90 seconds. Unless she stopped them. I know, she transmitted. Get everyone down, now. She didn't wait for confirmation. Switched targets. The mortar teams were setting up near a fuel depot. Captured supplies, probably. 3 drums of diesel stacked carelessly. Nobody thought about fire discipline when they were about to rain explosives on someone else. Big mistake. First shot. Top drum. The round punched through metal. Diesel sprayed. Dark liquid spreading across snow. Second shot. Lower drum. The bullet sparked on impact. Ricochet against the steel interior. Friction. Heat. Ignition. The explosion wasn't massive. Wasn't dramatic, but it was enough. Flame and smoke erupted, consuming the fuel, the wooden crates nearby, the mortar position. 3 soldiers caught in the initial blast, screaming, burning, the rest scattering. The barrage faltered, coordination broken, fear replacing discipline. Raven switched targets immediately. Now the mortar teams themselves. Without coordination, they were exposed. Vulnerable. Just men standing in the open with weapons they couldn't use fast enough. She worked methodically. 1 shot, 1 kill, reposition, repeat. The rhythm of hunting. The pattern she'd practiced alone in these mountains for 6 years. Every shot a conversation with the past. With Morrison. With Hendricks. With the part of Brennan that had died in that bunker, even though his body survived. The enemy began to retreat, not organized withdrawal. Rout, panic. Men running because staying meant dying, and running at least felt like choice. Raven keyed the radio. Bravo 6, enemy is withdrawing northeast. If you have any long-range capabilities left, now's the time. We're down to small arms, Hayes replied. His voice was tight, controlled, but she could hear the strain. The exhaustion of command, of keeping people alive through willpower. Then make them count. Start firing at grid 729er. Doesn't matter if you hit anything. I need them to think you have more resources than you do. You want us to fake a counterattack? I want you to look dangerous. If they think they're caught between 2 forces, they'll pull back completely. Lieutenant Ashford's voice cut in. That's a hell of a bluff. Welcome to asymmetric warfare, Raven said. Now shoot. She heard Hayes give the order. Seconds later, rifle fire cracked across the valley. Bravo Company opening fire on the designated grid. Not accurate, not devastating, but loud, coordinated, looking like a unit that still had fight left. Combined with her precision strikes, it created an illusion. Made Bravo Company seem like the tip of a larger force. Made the enemy think they were outnumbered, outgunned, caught in a trap. The enemy bought it. Their withdrawal became full retreat. Within 5 minutes, the ridge was clear, silent except for wind and the distant sound of men running for their lives. Raven allowed herself 1 moment to breathe, just 1. Then she checked her ammunition. 8 rounds left. The extraction window was in 23 minutes. If the enemy regrouped before then, she wouldn't have enough to hold them off again. Her radio crackled. Echo 7, Hayes' voice. They're gone. You did it. Raven didn't reply immediately. She was scanning the horizon, looking for movement, for the next threat. Because there was always a next threat, always another problem. Survival wasn't solving one crisis. It was managing an endless series of them. "They'll be back," she said finally, "with armor, with air support. They're not going to let you walk away from this." Then what do? You pray your extraction arrives on time, and I keep doing what I do, which is making them regret ever looking for me. She switched frequencies, listening to enemy communications. They were already calling for reinforcements, heavy weapons, gunships. The window was closing, minutes becoming seconds, seconds becoming the difference between escape and annihilation. Raven checked the sky. The storm was intensifying. That would ground aircraft. But it also meant visibility dropping to near zero. She had to keep the enemy fixated on the wrong position, keep them chasing shadows while Bravo Company slipped away, which meant revealing herself. Not her position, just enough presence to draw attention, to make them focus on hunting her instead of finding them. She fired a single shot into the enemy staging area, not at a person, at a communications antenna. The structure collapsed, severing their primary radio link, forcing them to use backup channels, slowing their coordination. Immediately she displaced, moved 300 meters west to a pre-scouted secondary position. Fired again, this time at a vehicle. The windshield shattered, driver dead, passenger scrambling, displaced again. The enemy began firing blindly in her direction, hundreds of rounds chewing through empty forest. She was already gone, already moving, already 3 steps ahead. One more shot, this time from the north. Different angle, different threat vector. They spun to face the new position. Burning ammunition, burning time, burning the confidence that came from thinking you were the hunter instead of the hunted. Raven smiled coldly. No warmth, no humor, just the satisfaction of a plan working, of making them dance to her rhythm, of being the thing they feared more than death. She would keep them dancing until Bravo Company was safe, or until her ammunition ran out, whichever came first. The radio transmission came through at 1847 hours. Emergency frequency, command channel. The voice was calm, professional, the kind of calm that felt wrong when people were dying. "All units, this is Hawk Actual. General withdrawal is in effect. Extract immediately to Rally Point Zulu. Acknowledge." Captain Hayes stared at the radio. Lieutenant Ashford grabbed it from his hand. Her face was pale, confused. "Hawk Actual, this is Bravo 6. We have wounded and are under heavy contact. Request clarification on extract coordinates." Acknowledged, Bravo 6. Evac birds are inbound to Rally Point Zulu. You have 14 minutes. Hawk Actual, out. The channel went dead. Professional. Final. The tone of someone delivering orders, not discussing options. Webb checked the map. His hands were shaking. Rally Point Zulu is 6 kilometers. Through enemy territory. Valley floor. We'll never make it. "We have to try," Ashford said. But her voice lacked conviction. She was doing the math. 6 kilometers in 14 minutes. Through snow, with wounded, against active enemy forces. The numbers didn't work. Hayes was already switching to the old frequency, the one that shouldn't exist, the one that had saved them twice already. Echo 7, command has ordered full withdrawal. Extraction at Rally Point Zulu. Can you? Don't go. The voice cut through, sharp, final, not suggestion, command. Hayes froze. What? It's a trap. Rally Point Zulu is compromised. Your command is feeding you into an ambush. Ashford's face went from pale to white. Her hand gripped the radio so hard her knuckles showed bone through skin. How can you know that? Because 6 years ago, my team got the same order. Same urgent timeline. Same rally point designation. We walked right into a kill zone. Hayes felt his blood turn cold. Something in his chest tightening. The understanding that nightmares could repeat, that history wasn't past. It was pattern. You're saying command is deliberately? I'm saying someone wants you dead, and they're using official channels to do it. If you go to Zulu, you won't board an evac bird. You'll walk into a prepared position, and they'll wipe you out before you realize what's happening. Webb's voice cracked. Then where do we go? Silence on the channel, long enough that Hayes thought she'd abandoned them. Left them with the knowledge of betrayal, but no solution, no escape. Then her voice returned, quieter, something different in the tone. Not just professional, personal. There's an old landing zone 3 clicks north. It's outside the command network, off the books. But it's clear. If you can get there, I can arrange extraction. Echo 7, Hayes said carefully, we have orders. Your orders will get you killed, Captain. Every soldier in that unit. Trust me or don't, but make the choice fast. You have 13 minutes. Hayes looked at his soldiers. 19 people, wounded, exhausted, trusting him to make the right call, to choose between the certainty of orders and the word of a ghost. He thought about Major Brennan, about the ambush that had been too perfect, about coordinates that placed them exactly where the enemy wanted them, about a sniper who'd been erased from records because she'd asked wrong questions. He thought about Rally Point Zulu, about a name used for extraction, about birds that were supposed to come, about men who'd followed orders into death. Ashford. He turned to his lieutenant. What do you think? Her jaw was tight, face hard. I think if she wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. She's had a dozen chances, easier chances than this. Webb checked the map. His finger traced routes. Rally Point Zulu puts us in a valley. No cover, no high ground. If it's hot, we're sitting ducks. Private Kim spoke from her position, voice quiet but firm. I trust the ghost more than I trust command right now, sir. Hayes picked up the radio, made his choice. The kind of choice that ended careers or saved lives. Sometimes both. Echo 7, we'll follow your lead. But if this goes wrong, Captain, we die together, just like old times. There was something in her voice, not quite humor, not quite bitterness, just acceptance. The tone of someone who'd made peace with mortality a long time ago. Give us a route, Hayes ordered. Raven transmitted coordinates. Her voice was clipped, professional. But underneath was something else, something that sounded almost like hope. Heading 025, stay in the trees, heavy cover. I'll scout ahead, clear the path. You have 16 minutes before evac window closes. What about you? What about me? How do you get out? A long pause. Wind howled through the channel. Or maybe that was just the mountain, just the cold, just the sound of winter claiming everything eventually. I don't, she said finally. Simple. Final. Echo 7. I've been out here 6 years, Captain, living in places that aren't on maps, surviving on what I can scavenge. I don't get to leave. That choice was made a long time ago. But you do. So move your ass before I change my mind. The radio went silent. Ashford stared at Hayes. She's staying behind. She's covering our withdrawal, Hayes said, voice flat, the tone of command, of decisions made and consequences accepted. Sir, we can't just abandon. She's not asking for rescue, Lieutenant. She's asking us to survive, to make her choice mean something. Hayes stood, addressed the company. His voice carried, strong, the voice that made men follow, even when following meant walking toward death. Everyone up. We're moving north. Stay tight. Stay quiet. Follow the path. And whatever you hear behind us, he paused, made sure they understood. You don't look back. They moved out, 19 soldiers, through snow and trees, following coordinates given by a ghost, trusting a voice on a radio more than the orders from command, making the kind of choice that defined survival, that separated the living from the dead. Behind them, in the fading light, on a ridge they couldn't see, Raven Cross watched them through her scope. 19 soldiers, 19 lives. More than she'd saved last time. More than Morrison and Hendricks. More than the part of Brennan that had died in that bunker. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because behind her she could hear them coming. The enemy, regrouping, realizing where Bravo Company was heading, setting up to intercept. 40 soldiers, 3 armored vehicles, 1 officer coordinating the operation. She counted her ammunition. 4 rounds left. Not enough to stop them, but enough to slow them down, enough to buy minutes. And minutes were all Bravo Company needed. Minutes between survival and death, between making it to the LZ and dying in snow. Raven adjusted her position one last time, found the perfect angle, settled her breathing, let the world narrow to the scope, to the crosshairs, to the space between heartbeats where decisions became bullets and bullets became consequences. The officer raised his radio, giving orders, coordinating the attack, making the kind of choices that got soldiers killed, that turned men into casualties and operations into massacres. She centered the crosshairs, exhaled, let everything else fall away. The cold, the fear, the 6 years of survival, the ghosts that followed her, Morrison, Hendricks, the parts of herself she'd left in that bunker with Brennan. "This is for my team," she whispered, "for the ones who didn't make it, for the promise I made," and pulled the trigger. The officer dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Through the scope, Raven watched chaos erupt, soldiers scattering, diving for cover, the dance of men who suddenly realized they were prey instead of predators. She'd seen it before. The moment when confidence became fear, when the hunter became the hunted. 3 rounds left. The armored vehicles activated protocols, turrets swiveling, searching for targets, for muzzle flash, for anything to shoot at besides shadows and snow. But she was already moving. Low crawl, 30 meters east, to a position she'd scouted 3 days ago, when she'd first realized someone was setting up another Kalvik, another sacrifice disguised as orders. Stay mobile or die. The first rule of survival, the only rule that mattered when you were alone against 40. She reached the new position, a collapsed bunker, concrete walls half buried in snow, perfect concealment, perfect angle. She set up quickly, rifle braced, scope acquiring targets. The enemy was spreading out, standard search pattern, looking for one shooter, finding nothing but winter. 2 rounds left. The lead armored vehicle moved slowly, turret scanning. The commander stood exposed in the hatch, arrogant, protected by steel and firepower, thinking armor made you invincible, thinking metal was better than invisibility. Fatal mistake. She adjusted for wind, for distance, for the movement of the vehicle, for every variable that turns shooting from simple physics into complex mathematics. Exhaled, held the empty space between breaths, squeezed. The commander fell back into the hatch, disappeared. The vehicle lurched to a stop. Crew inside suddenly understanding that armor meant nothing when the enemy could see the gaps, could wait for the moment when flesh was exposed, when confidence became casualty. 1 round left. The convoy halted. 40 soldiers looking for one target, spreading across the ridge, getting closer. Too close. She could hear their voices now, sharp commands, nervous responses. The sound of men who knew death was near but couldn't see it, couldn't fight it, could only wait for it to find them. Raven displaced again. 50 meters, close enough to be unexpected, far enough to escape if they rushed her position. She found cover behind a massive fallen tree, snow-covered, nearly invisible. Just another piece of winter landscape that happened to contain a woman with a rifle and a promise to keep. She watched them spreading out. 40 soldiers, good training, good discipline. They were searching methodically, professionally. In another situation, she might have respected them, might have recognized them as soldiers doing their job, following orders, same as she'd done once. But that was before Kalvik. Before she learned that orders could be execution disguised as duty. She waited, patient, letting them move deeper, letting them feel exposed. Terrain was weapon, fear was ammunition, time was the trigger. Then she fired at the rearmost soldier, the one who thought he was safe because he was at the back, because danger came from the front, because that's where enemies were supposed to be. He dropped. The unit panicked, spun, fired wildly at the direction of the shot. Hundreds of rounds chewing through empty forest, through positions she'd already abandoned, through ghosts and possibilities. 0 rounds left. She dropped the rifle, started running, because now she had no ammunition and 40 enemies who knew exactly where she was. Because the mathematics had changed. Because survival meant movement, and movement meant distance, and distance meant not being where bullets were going. Raven sprinted through the snow, lungs burning, legs pumping. Behind her, voices shouting, orders, coordinates, the sound of men organizing, pursuing, hunting. She had one advantage. She knew this terrain. Every rock, every tree, every cave and crevice and hidden path. 6 years of survival. 6 years of learning the mountains, of becoming part of the landscape instead of just moving through it. She checked her watch while running. 12 minutes until extraction window closed. Bravo Company would be at the landing zone now, waiting, vulnerable. If the enemy reached them before the helicopter arrived, everything she'd done would be meaningless. Morrison and Hendricks would still be unavenged. Brennan's promise would still be broken. She couldn't let that happen. Raven keyed her radio, breathing hard, each word between gasps. Bravo 6. Enemy forces pinned at my position. Get your people on that bird. That's an order. Hayes's voice came back immediately. Echo 7, we're not leaving without... You don't have a choice, Captain. She jumped over a fallen log, slid down an embankment, kept moving. The mission is survival. Yours, not mine. Now move. She cut the channel. Didn't want to hear his protests. Didn't want to hear the part of him that believed no one got left behind. That believed in honor, in duty, and all the things that got soldiers killed when the world didn't play by the same rules. Behind her, the enemy was closing. She could hear them. Boots crunching through snow. Equipment rattling. The sound of pursuit. Of men who'd lost 12 soldiers to an invisible enemy and wanted payback, wanted blood, wanted proof that ghosts could die. 30 meters, 20. She saw them splitting, half pursuing her, half breaking toward the landing zone. They'd figured it out, realized that stopping her wasn't enough. They had to stop the extraction, had to finish what started as ambush, had to make sure no one survived to tell the story, to ask questions, to testify. Damn! 1 bullet left in the rifle she dropped. 40 enemies, half heading toward 19 soldiers waiting for rescue. The mathematics were impossible. The choice was simple. Stop them or die trying. Raven changed direction, angled northeast, toward the intercept point, toward the path the 20 soldiers would take to reach the landing zone. She had no ammunition, no weapons except the knife on her belt and 6 years of anger looking for a target. It would have to be enough. She scanned the terrain while running, looking for advantage, for anything she could use, for the kind of tactical opportunity that training taught you to see, that desperation made you create. There, an old avalanche chute, unstable snowpack, step slope above the path the enemy would take. If she could trigger it, if the conditions were right, if physics and desperation aligned. Big if, but it was all she had. Raven climbed, fast, reckless, speed over safety. Her hands were numb, her legs screaming, but she kept moving, because stopping meant dying, because 19 soldiers were depending on someone they'd never met, someone they couldn't see, someone who'd promised a dead man she'd make his sacrifice mean something. She reached the top of the chute, looked down. The enemy patrol was moving below. 20 soldiers, weapons ready, moving fast toward the landing zone, toward Bravo Company, toward the massacre they'd been ordered to complete. Raven studied the snowpack. Deep, heavy, sitting on rock at a steep angle. Unstable, waiting for a trigger, for the right kind of disturbance to turn solid into liquid, to turn snow into avalanche. She had no explosives, no tools, just boots and anger, and the understanding that sometimes you became the weapon when you had nothing else left to fight with. She started jumping, landing hard, again, again, each impact sending vibrations through the snowpack, testing its stability, testing the edge between solid and collapse. The snow groaned, a deep sound, like the mountain was waking up, like winter was remembering it could kill without mercy. Below, the lead soldiers heard it, looked up, saw her, raised weapons. Raven jumped harder. One more time, one more impact, one more chance. The snowpack broke. What happened next wasn't dramatic, wasn't cinematic. It was just physics. Mass times acceleration, gravity times momentum. Thousands of tons of snow deciding it wanted to be somewhere lower. Somewhere that happened to have 20 soldiers in the way. The avalanche moved fast, not like water, like a living thing, consuming, crushing, turning the world white and removing everything that wasn't mountain. Raven jumped sideways, scrambled toward rock outcropping, barely made it. The snow roared past, missing her by meters, by seconds, by the thin margin that separated survival from being erased. She clung to the rocks, waited for it to stop, for the world to be solid again, for the roar to become silence. When it ended, the path was gone, buried under 10 feet of snow and debris. She couldn't see bodies, couldn't see movement, just white, just winter reclaiming territory, just the mountain deciding this was its space and men were temporary. She didn't know if all 20 were caught, didn't know if any survived, didn't have time to check, because the other 20 were still behind her, still hunting, still closing, and she still had no ammunition. Raven slid down the opposite side of the ridge, toward the landing zone, toward where Bravo Company waited, where Hayes and Ashford and Webb and 18 others were counting seconds, praying that metal birds would come, that command would keep its word this time, that extraction meant rescue instead of trap. She could hear the helicopter now, distant, growing closer, the whump-whump of rotors cutting through storm, the sound of hope, of escape, of everything she'd fought for. But she could also hear the other sound, behind her. The 20 soldiers who'd avoided the avalanche, who were still pursuing, still hunting, still determined to complete their mission, to make sure no one talked about wrong coordinates in early artillery and patterns that repeated. Raven ran faster, legs burning, lungs screaming, heart hammering against ribs like it wanted out, like it knew what was coming and wanted to escape before the body stopped moving. She burst through the tree line. The landing zone was ahead. Clear space. Helicopter descending. Bravo Company loading. Hayes waving people aboard. Doing the math. 19 soldiers. One bird. Not enough seats for everyone in one trip. But they were trying. Because that's what soldiers did. They tried. Even when the math was wrong. Even when survival meant leaving someone behind. Hayes saw her. His face changed. Relief, confusion, hope. She keyed her radio while running, breathing too hard to make words easy. Go, now, don't wait. Echo 7. 20 hostiles, 300 meters behind me. Get airborne or they'll shoot you down. We can wait. We can fit. You can't fit 21 people in a bird rated for 18. Do the math, Captain. Someone stays. That someone is me. She was 50 meters from the LZ now, close enough to see faces, to see Hayes arguing with the pilot, to see Ashford grabbing soldiers, forcing them aboard, making choices, doing triage with human lives. Echo 7, Hayes transmitted. Get to the LZ. We'll figure it out. Already figured, Captain. I buy you time. You get them home. That's the deal. That wasn't the deal. It is now. Raven stopped running, turned, drew her knife, the only weapon she had left. 6 inches of steel against 20 rifles. The mathematics were absurd. The choice was simple. She'd promised Brennan, promised Morrison in Hendricks, promised herself 6 years ago when she'd walked away from everything, when she'd become a ghost so the dead could have meaning. This was that meaning. 19 soldiers going home. 19 people who'd survived because someone decided their lives mattered more than her own. It was enough. It had to be enough. The enemy burst through the tree line. 20 soldiers, weapons ready. They saw her, saw the knife, saw the woman who'd killed 12 of their unit, who'd buried 20 more under snow, who'd been a ghost and was now just flesh, just target, just the end of a hunt that had lasted 6 years. Behind her, the helicopter lifted, rotors screaming, pulling away, getting distance, getting altitude, getting safe. She didn't turn to watch, kept her eyes on the enemy, on the men raising weapons, on the moment between life and death. The space where seconds felt like hours and choices became epitaphs. But the shooting didn't come. Instead, a voice, amplified, coming from the helicopter, Hayes on the external speaker. Fire on her and we return fire. Pilot has rockets. You've got 10 seconds to stand down. Raven's breath caught. What was he doing? The bird was overloaded, unstable. One combat maneuver would dump them all. This was suicide. This was 8 seconds. Hayes counted. His voice was steel, was command, was the tone that made men follow even when following meant dying. 7, 6. The enemy soldiers hesitated. 20 rifles, 1 helicopter. The math wasn't hard. But command had taught them hesitation was death, that stopping meant targets, that mercy was weakness. 5 seconds. 4. The lead soldier lowered his weapon, gestured. The others followed, slowly, reluctantly, but following. Because sometimes the math was wrong. Sometimes survival meant knowing when the fight was lost. Hayes's voice again. Echo 7, move, now. Helicopters landing, get aboard. Negative. She didn't move, kept her knife ready, kept her eyes on the enemy. You're overloaded, already over weight limit, can't take another passenger. We'll make room. Physics doesn't negotiate, Captain. Bird's already unstable. 1 more person and you crash before reaching base. Do the math. I did. Hayes's voice was different now. Not command, something else. Something that sounded like pain. Answer's unacceptable. Get on the bird. Can't do that, sir. That's an order, Sergeant. You're not my commanding officer. She almost smiled. Almost. Haven't been for 6 years. Orders don't apply to ghosts. The helicopter hovered. Unstable, struggling. Pilot's voice crackling over the radio, arguing. Warning about weight, about fuel, about the physics that would kill them all if they didn't leave. Now. Hayes wasn't listening. The helicopter descended, touching down, skids hitting snow. Ashford jumped out, running toward Raven, face determined. Ma'am, Raven said quietly, don't make me fight you. You know I'll win. Ashford stopped, eyes hard. Then you damn well better survive, Sergeant, because we're coming back for you. That's not a threat, that's a promise. Don't make promises you can't keep, Lieutenant. I learned that the hard way. Then learn this. Ashford's voice cracked. We don't leave soldiers behind. Not anymore. Not after what they did to you. We're coming back. The enemy was moving again, circling, weapons ready. The hesitation was ending. Discipline reasserting. Orders overriding mercy. Go! Raven's voice was final. Now, before this gets worse. Ashford ran back to the helicopter, jumped aboard. The bird lifted immediately, struggling, rotors screaming, pulling away from the LZ, from the enemy, from the woman standing alone with a knife, and 6 years of survival. Raven watched it go, watched 19 soldiers escape, watched the helicopter bank, turn, disappear into the storm. Made it mean something, she thought. Morrison, Hendricks, Ward. I made it mean something. She turned back to the enemy. 20 rifles pointed at her chest. 20 soldiers who'd been hunting a ghost and found a woman. Who'd expected a phantom and got flesh and blood, and someone who'd finally run out of places to hide. The lead soldier raised his weapon. Finger on trigger. The moment stretched, became eternal. Became the space where everything stopped except the understanding that this was the end. That ghosts couldn't run forever. That promises had prices, and she'd finally run out of currency. But he didn't fire. Instead, he lowered the weapon, spoke, voice carrying across the snow. Echo 7. We've been hunting you for 6 years. Whole battalions deployed, satellites, drones, everything. You've killed 43 of our soldiers, stopped a dozen operations. You know how many times we almost had you? She didn't answer, just waited, knife ready, body coiled. 0. His voice held something like respect, like recognition. You're a ghost, real one, not metaphor. You don't exist in any system, any record. You're already dead. Killing you again seems redundant. He gestured. His unit lowered weapons, stepped back. We'll report you KIA. Caught in the avalanche, buried, no body recovered. He met her eyes. But next time we get orders to hunt you, we're following them. This is professional courtesy, one soldier to another. It doesn't happen twice. Understood. Then disappear, Sergeant, properly this time, because they're going to keep sending us, keep trying to erase you, and eventually we'll succeed. I know. The enemy withdrew, backs turned, moving away, leaving her alone in the snow, alone with survival, with one more day, one more chance to stay hidden, to stay breathing, to stay a ghost. Raven waited until they were gone, until the sounds of their movement faded, until she was alone with winter and wind, and the understanding that this wasn't over, would never be over, that being alive meant being hunted, that survival was just the space between attempts to kill you. She walked to where she dropped her rifle. Hours ago, lifetime ago. Picked it up, checked it over. Still functional, still deadly, just empty, like her. Then she walked into the mountains, into the places that weren't on maps, into the spaces between recorded and forgotten. Back to being Echo 7. Back to being the ghost that answered when desperate soldiers called. Because the promise wasn't complete. 19 soldiers saved wasn't enough. Not while Rally Point Zulu still existed. Not while command still sent teams to die. Not while patterns repeated and soldiers became sacrifices and no one asked why. She had work to do, time to prepare, coordinates to monitor, frequencies to watch. And one day, someone would call again, would be desperate enough to use the frequency that shouldn't exist, would need the ghost that wasn't supposed to be real, and she'd answer. Because that's what she'd promised Ward Brennan. That's what Morrison and Hendricks died for. That's what 6 years of survival had purchased. One more chance to make it mean something. 3 months later, Spring was trying to remember how to exist. The inquiry room was sterile. White walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant and lies. Captain Garrett Hayes sat at a metal table. Lieutenant Claire Ashford beside him. Corporal Tucker Webb at the end. All three in dress uniform. All three about to testify about events that officially didn't happen. The board consisted of 3 officers, 2 colonels, 1 general, all with expressions that said the verdict was already decided, that this was theater, performance, the illusion of investigation without the substance. Captain Hayes, the general's voice was flat, professional. You claim your company was saved by a deceased soldier. Sergeant Raven Cross, declared KIA 6 years ago following Operation Calvic. Yes, sir, that's correct. And this soldier communicated with you via an encrypted frequency that was decommissioned 6 years ago. Yes, sir. And provided fire support from an unknown position, killing approximately 12 enemy combatants, guiding your unit to safety. 12 confirmed, sir. Possibly more. We couldn't verify all casualties. The general glanced at his notes. You also claim that Rally Point Zulu, the designated extraction point, was compromised. That extraction orders were actually an ambush. Based on intelligence provided by Echo 7, yes, sir, she indicated that similar tactics had been used in Operation Kalvik. That command has repeatedly used Rally Point Zulu designation for elimination operations disguised as extractions. Do you have evidence of this? Hayes pulled out a data drive. Major Brennan compiled encrypted files before his death. Records of similar incidents over 6 years. Units sent to Zulu coordinates, high casualty rates, pattern of compromise. The general didn't take the drive. That evidence was lost in combat, Captain. No such files were recovered from Major Brennan's effects. Sir, I'm holding it right now. What you're holding is unverified data from unknown sources. Inadmissible. Hayes felt his jaw tighten. Sir, 19 soldiers survived because we followed Echo 7's guidance instead of extraction orders. If we'd gone to Rally Point Zulu, if you'd followed orders, Captain, we'd know for certain whether Zulu was compromised. Instead, we have speculation, assumptions, the testimony of exhausted soldiers under extreme stress. We all heard her, sir. Ashford spoke up. Her voice was controlled, barely. All 19 survivors confirmed the same account. Same voice, same call sign, same tactical guidance. Mass hallucination is documented in combat situations, Lieutenant. Shared delusion under stress. With all due respect, sir, that's bullshit. Watch your tone, Lieutenant. Webb leaned forward. His voice was quiet, deadly. We have radio recordings, sir. Echo 7's transmissions, her voice, her coordinates, physical evidence, which are easily fabricated, Corporal. Radio interference, signal bounce, any number of technical explanations that don't require invoking deceased soldiers. The general closed his folder. Report is complete. Findings are as follows. Bravo Company encountered heavy resistance due to intelligence failures and unfortunate enemy positioning. Casualties were sustained. Survivors displayed exceptional tactical adaptation and successfully self-extracted to an alternate location. No evidence supports the existence of external support from non-authorized personnel. He looked at each of them. His face was stone. Furthermore, continued insistence on the Echo 7 narrative will be considered evidence of psychological trauma requiring medical evaluation and possible discharge. Am I understood? Hayes met his eyes, didn't blink, didn't look away. Perfectly, sir. Good, you're dismissed. All 3 of you are being reassigned. Separate units, separate bases. Consider it a fresh start. They stood, saluted, walked out, maintained discipline until the door closed behind them. Then Hayes slammed his fist into the wall. Once. Hard enough to split knuckles. They're covering it up, Webb said. Everything. Kalvik, Zulu, all of it. Ashford pulled out her phone, started typing. I'm documenting everything, every incident, every pattern, building a file they can't ignore. They'll bury it, Hayes said, same as they buried her. Same as they'll bury us if we push too hard. Then we don't push. Ashford's eyes were hard. We collect, we wait, we find others. Build evidence they can't dismiss as combat stress. How long? As long as it takes. They might kill us first, like they killed Brennan, like they tried to kill her. Ashford smiled. No humor, just edges. Then we make sure the files go public if we die. Insurance. Same as Brennan gave her. Hayes looked at both of them. His team. His responsibility. The people he'd gotten out alive because a ghost had answered a radio call. No regrets? Webb shook his head. She saved our lives, sir. We owe her. We owe everyone they've killed, everyone they're going to kill if we don't stop them. Ashford nodded. I'm in, whatever it takes. Hayes pulled out the frequency card, the one Webb had taken from Brennan, the one that shouldn't exist. Faded numbers on laminated plastic, a lifeline that looked like history. Then we do this right. We find the others, the survivors, the ones who've seen the pattern. We build a case that can't be ignored. And if they come for us, Webb asked, then we make sure Echo 7 knows. Hayes almost smiled, because apparently ghosts listen better than command. They separated, 3 soldiers walking different directions, carrying secrets, carrying proof, carrying the understanding that some fights didn't end with survival. They just changed battlefields. In the barracks that night, soldiers talked, the way soldiers always talked, in low voices, in the spaces between official and truth. Stories spreading like virus, like legend, like the kind of thing that couldn't be stopped because it filled a need, because people wanted to believe someone was watching, someone cared, someone answered when everything else failed. You hear about Bravo Company? Phantom snipers saved them, voice on old frequency. Call sign Echo 7, that's ghost story bullshit. 19 survivors say different, all same account. Woman's voice, precision fire, guided them out when command hung them to dry. Command doesn't do that. Silence. The kind that said everyone knew command did exactly that. Just no one was supposed to say it out loud. Someone else spoke. Quiet, careful. My unit got hit last month. Same setup, wrong coordinates, ambush. We were dead. Then shots started dropping from nowhere. Enemy positions collapsing. We fought our way out. You see the shooter? No, but I heard the radio. Old channel, woman's voice. Said she was repositioning. Said to run while we had the chance. Another voice, then another. Stories accumulating. Incidents compiling. A pattern emerging from what should have been coincidence, should have been luck, should have been anything except what it actually was. Someone keeping promises, someone watching, someone who decided that being dead gave you freedom. That ghost didn't follow orders, that loyalty was to soldiers, not to command. The stories grew, changed, evolved. Some said Echo 7 was a program, AI running combat algorithms. Others said she was a deserter, criminal hiding in mountains. A few said she was exactly what she claimed. Ghost, phantom, the thing that happened when soldiers got abandoned and one decided to stay. To watch, to answer. Lieutenant Ashford compiled the reports. 11 incidents in 3 months. All similar pattern. Units in desperate situations. Old frequency called. Female voice responding. Precision support from unknown positions. Enemy forces neutralized. Then silence. She marked them on a map. Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Northern Territories, mountains, wilderness, places where someone could survive off-grid, where 6 years could pass without contact, without detection, without existing in any system except the one she built herself. Hayes tracked the pattern, correlating incidents with failed operations, with Rally Point Zulu designations, with extraction orders that led to ambush. The data was damning, clear, provable. But proving it meant going against command, meant accusing officers, meant painting targets on their own backs. Same targets that had killed Brennan's career. Same targets that had tried to kill Echo 7. We need more, Hayes said, looking at the map, at the data, at the evidence that wasn't quite enough. We need someone who'll listen, who has authority, who gives a damn about soldiers more than politics. Those don't exist, sir, Webb said. Not at levels that matter. Then we make them exist. Hayes pulled out his phone, started scrolling, looking for names, for journalists, for congressmen who'd built careers on military reform, for anyone who might care that soldiers were being sacrificed. It took 6 weeks to find someone. Senator, military background, Armed Services Committee, reputation for asking uncomfortable questions, for pushing investigations when others looked away. Hayes sent the files, encrypted, anonymized, everything they'd compiled, every incident, every pattern, every piece of evidence that said Rally Point Zulu was murder disguised as extraction. Then they waited, days becoming weeks, weeks becoming the space where hope died slowly, until the email came. Simple, direct. I believe you. Evidence is compelling. Starting inquiry. Stay safe. Help is coming. They met in Hayes's apartment, looked at the message, at the promise, at the words that might mean rescue or might mean trap. Think it's real? Webb asked. Don't know, Hayes said, but it's something. First person who didn't dismiss us as crazy, who looked at the evidence instead of the rank. What do? We keep documenting, keep compiling, keep making sure if something happens to us, the files go public. Insurance. Ashford pulled up the map again. 11 incidents, now 13. 2 more in the last week. Same pattern, same ghost, same promise kept. She's still out there, Ashford said quietly. Still answering, still saving people. Hayes stared at the map, at the mountains, at the spaces where someone could hide, could survive, could become legend instead of history. I hope she stays hidden, he said, because the moment they find her, they'll kill her. For real this time. Make sure she can't testify, can't prove what happened at Calvik. Then we make sure they don't find her, Webb said. We're her insurance. She kept us alive. We keep her story alive. Deal. They worked through the night, compiling, organizing, building the case that would either bring justice or get them killed. Understanding that some promises required everything, that honor wasn't convenient, that doing the right thing often meant becoming the target. But they'd been saved by a ghost, by someone who'd sacrificed everything to keep a promise to a dying man, who'd spent 6 years in mountains because testimony was dangerous and silence was survival. They owed her, owed Brennan, owed Morrison and Hendricks, and every soldier who died because someone decided convenience mattered more than lives. The debt would be paid, however long it took, however dangerous it became, because that's what soldiers did. They kept promises. They honored debts. They made sure sacrifices meant something, even when the world said to forget, to move on, to accept that some deaths were just the cost of operation, especially then. 400 kilometers north, present day, Firebase Eagle was dying. 40 soldiers, surrounded, ammunition running low, communications degraded, command wasn't responding, medevac wasn't coming, the mathematics of survival getting simpler with each passing hour. Major Sarah Bradley pressed against frozen sandbags, radio in hand, cycling through frequencies, hoping, praying, doing what desperate people did when hope was the only ammunition left. She found the frequency card in her vest pocket, old, faded, passed soldier to soldier like contraband, like legend, like the kind of thing you didn't believe in until you needed to. The numbers were barely readable. The card was cracked, but it was there. Real. Physical proof that maybe ghosts existed. Maybe promises were kept. Maybe someone was watching. Bradley keyed the frequency. Her voice was steady, professional. The mask command required even when everything was ending. Echo 7, this is Firebase Eagle. If anyone is monitoring this channel, pause, breath, prayer, we need help. Static, just static, the sound of empty frequency, of prayers unanswered, of hope dying in real time. She was about to switch off when the radio crackled. A voice, female, calm, cold as winter, each word precise, professional. The tone of someone who'd done this before, who'd answered this call, who'd kept this promise. Echo 7 listening. Who needs me? Bradley's breath caught. The legend was real. The ghost existed. The promise was kept. She transmitted coordinates. situation, enemy strength, everything. Desperate data dump of someone who'd stopped believing in rescue and suddenly found it might exist. The voice responded, not with sympathy, with tactics. Firebase Eagle, I have your position. Enemy forces visible. You have 18 minutes before they breach your perimeter. Prepare for fire support. And stay down. Who are you? Someone who made a promise. Now do what I tell you and you'll survive to ask better questions. The channel went silent. Bradley stared at the radio, then at her soldiers. At the 40 people depending on her to make choices, to keep them alive, to be worth the trust they'd given. Everyone down, she ordered. Fire support inbound, source unknown. Don't ask questions, just survive. 90 seconds later, the first enemy position exploded. Precision fire from unknown direction. Then another, then another. Methodical, professional. The work of someone who'd been doing this for years, who'd become death and made it look like arithmetic. The siege broke. Enemy forces withdrawing, confused, scattered, chased by invisible hunter, by phantom who killed from positions they couldn't locate, couldn't target, couldn't fight. 15 minutes later, medevac arrived. Real birds, real extraction, real survival. Bradley tried to call Echo 7, to thank, to understand, to know. The frequency was dead, silent, like it had never existed, like the voice had been hallucination, like salvation was just luck disguised as miracle. But the enemy bodies were real. The saved soldiers were real. The survival was real. Something else was real too. In the mountains, in the spaces between maps and memory, someone was keeping watch. Someone was answering. Someone had decided that being dead gave you freedom, that ghosts didn't follow orders, that promises mattered more than survival. And when desperate soldiers called, when everything failed, when command abandoned and hope died, she listened. Echo 7, listening. Who needs me? The question echoed across frequencies, across mountains, across 6 years of survival and promises kept, and sacrifices made meaningful. In the wind, in the snow, in the spaces where legends lived, someone smiled. Cold, grim, satisfied. Made it mean something, Ward. Morrison, Hendricks. Made all of it mean something. And somewhere, in the place where soldiers went when they died keeping promises, 3 ghosts smiled back. Mission accomplished, they said. Mission accomplished. The mountains kept their secrets, the snow covered the tracks, and Echo 7 disappeared again into legend, into frequency, into the promise that would outlive everyone who made it. Because some promises were bigger than people. Some debts couldn't be repaid. Some ghosts were real. And when soldiers needed them most, they answered. Always.